Hey everybody, Derek here. I'm here to bring you another video for The Walking Dead. One of the things I wanted to do for this video today was something that they brought up in Talking Dead. One of the things that they're starting to do on Talking Dead is they're starting to do live polls where they'll basically ask a question and live people are voting. And one of the things that they asked last week was, um, is Carol a better leader than Rick, and should Carol take over Rick's leadership of the group? And most people actually said no. I think it was about 70%, maybe 60% said no. And I'm not here to say that whether Carol's a better leader than Rick. What I want to do instead is assess Rick and Carol's strengths and weaknesses to show, who has better traits in some areas than others. Because here's the simple fact of the matter. No matter what kind of a situation you're in, whether it's here now being the CEO of a corporation, the president of the United States, or being the leader in a zombie apocalypse group, you're not perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect leader. None. Because there's so many different balancing, interests that you really can't always do what's good for everybody. It's just not possible when you have different conflicting ideas. And the fact of the matter is, there's no perfect leader. Rick and Carol both have their strengths and weaknesses. But like I said, instead, what I want to do is just weigh those different strengths and weaknesses for each of them, rather than say that Rick's a better leader than Carol or Carol's a better leader than Rick, because it's not the case. I don't think that either one of them is necessarily better than the other. I just think that in certain situations, one of them can act better than the other. So that's how I look at it. And again, I'm just going to start my analysis by saying things that they have in common. I mean, we've established that both of them are very tough. Both of them have the ability to make very tough decisions. They have the ability to follow through with their decisions. And they have had brutal moments. I mean, you have Carol killing Lizzie, and Karen and David. You have Rick killing Tomas, and fighting against Dave and Tony. I mean, you have a lot of things that both of them have been willing to do to show that they're going to do things that may not necessarily be, you know, what we would do in today's world. You don't just kill people, but they've both shown that they have the ability to be tough. They both are quick thinking. I mean, they both have the ability to make plans and follow through with them. And they both have various things that are leadership, worthy, I think. But there are several differences between them. And one of the things I have found in Carol is that I feel Carol has more patience than Rick does. We've seen over the course of the series that Rick has made a lot of decisions without really, I think, taking the time to think them through. And that's resulted in bad things happening. I mean, Rick, the best example that I can think of at this point is what happened last night. When Rick and them get out of the terminus, and Rick goes and grabs the guns, go, here you go, guys, here you go, here you go. We're going back there, and we're going to kill all of them. And everybody's like, Rick, are you kidding? Like, the place is on fire. There's walkers all over the place. Several of them are dead. They're done. I mean, what more can they do with them? Now, of course, this is Walking Dead. We know that that decision is going to be negative. I mean, that's just the way that The Walking Dead is. But thinking of it in a practical manner instead, yeah, that's very risky. If they would have gone back there, there's a chance that some of them could have been shot and killed. Some of them could have been attacked by walkers. It's a bad idea. You can see both sides of it. And I think that, again, I think that Rick was just so gung-ho at that point to take them out that he wasn't thinking about what are the negative consequences of my actions. I don't think that he cared. And you've seen that happen in other ways. When Rick basically didn't take action because he was going at it. I mean, yeah, he had a crazy spell, but he didn't take action. The governor attacked the prison, and Axel was killed. I mean, that was a very good example. And Rick also doesn't always listen to what people are telling him. I mean, he's gotten better at that, I guess, because the thing is we've seen Rick more in a leadership role than Carol overall in regards to the amount of time. And Rick has shown that he doesn't always listen. I mean, especially in season 3 when, you had Herschel trying to, at that point, mentor him. Rick was just like, here's the mental wall, and I'm going to do what I have to do, and, Laurie several times tried to put some input in, but of course he, was upset with her, and I feel like he wasn't very receptive. Now, Carol, on the other hand, I feel like she exhibits the ability to listen to people and act appropriately, and she's really more mindful of her thoughts and her actions, in my opinion. Like, even the killing of Karen and David, she didn't do that on a whim. She even admitted, it was something that was a tough decision, and I thought about it, and I made that decision. But it wasn't like she just all of a sudden was sitting in the room and went bam, bam, She thought about it. And another thing I find is, with Lizzie being, crazy about the walkers, I think that Carol was more interested in learning about Lizzie and trying to help her grow. I mean, the signs were all there that, hey, you should probably, ditch this girl while you have a chance because she's nuts. But, Carol has more of a, patience with someone like Lizzie, and she wants to see Lizzie grow, and she wants to help her. So I think that Carol has more patience in dealing with things, whereas Rick, overall, I mean, again, they have their moments, but I think that Rick overall is more of a, hey, this is what we're going to do, and if you all don't like it, screw you. And that can't always be the case. Sometimes that needs to be what happens, but it's not always a good idea. The next thing is I feel like Rick is only really concerned about Carl's development, whereas Carol is more willing to, see people grow, and she's a little more interactive, in my opinion, than Rick is. Rick is trying to help Carl grow, but I feel like overall Carl can be, and Judith, of course, too, but I feel like Carl can be a little, distracting from Rick being able to make the right, proper decision. I don't think that there's really ever been too many moments in the show's history where Rick made a decision based on Carl and it hurt somebody else. I can't remember if there has been, but in the comics, Rick's made a statement which I feel is implied in The Walking Dead, and he told Laurie at the prison one day that he would kill every single person in the prison if it meant keeping his family safe. Which, of course, is, that's what a family-oriented person would do, but I feel like, Rick having the ties of Carl and Judith, it can be a hindrance on his leadership ability. Because if he's more focused on his children than the overall well-being of the group, it might turn out to have negative consequences. It hasn't yet, but there is the potential for that. Whereas Carol not having those ties, she's able to, observe more, in my opinion. And, you saw her do that with Lizzie and Mika. She tried to help them grow. She tried to help the children learn how to hold a knife in the prison. And you also had her coaching Tyrese. I mean, especially in the premiere, when Tyrese didn't want to kill that walker. And he was like, I can't. And Carol handed him Judith, and, she's like, Tyrese, you have to be able to. You can't just, recuse yourself from the world around you. And I feel like because of the fact that Carol doesn't have those ties, she's able to make decisions and mentor people in a way that's best for them and potentially everybody else. So I feel like that's something that they both are different about. Now, one thing that I like about Rick, though, is I feel like Rick is a leader who makes decisions for the future, like the far future, whereas Carol's more concerned about the here and now, which is good for now, but, like, Carol often saying, like, hey, this is the way the world is, and you have to do what you have to do, but one thing that Carol forgets is that one day the world is going to change, and I feel like, when she made the decision to kill Karen and David, one thing that I thought about was, Carol, we're kind of past that point. No offense. When they were in the prison, it was more of an opportunity to, have their first community. I mean, this is almost like returning to a state of normalcy in a way. You have a community and you're trying to build it. You have a council making decisions. You have a lot of different things going on in order to return us back to society. And I feel like, or as close to it as you can get. And I feel like Rick has always made several choices in order to better the group in the far future. He's thinking more about himself as well as everybody else. Hey, we got this prison, let's build it up, and let's bring people in, let's grow a community. And the thing about it is that when Carol killed Karen and David, she was showing that she's more thinking about the now. Like, hey, we're in a very bad zombie apocalypse world, and I need to make a decision. And I don't think that Rick would have ever made a decision like that. Because I think that, again, he's looking more towards the future, and he's thinking in the future, we can't just go around killing people. And I think that ultimately is something that Rick has a better image and a better idea of where to take the group than Carol does. Yeah, Carol's good for when it gets time to get tough, but if you're looking at the overall big picture of rebuilding this world and making it a better place, Rick's your man, in my opinion. Another thing that Rick has is, despite what you may think, I think that Rick has more compassion for people than Carol does. I mean, say what you want. I mean, Carol is a great leader, and again, I understand, and I think just like everybody else can understand, why Carol made the decision that she made to kill Karen and David. But it is a big deal. And something I always say is, think about leaders in history. And I always say that one act of inhumanity or against, the ideals of being a leader can make you remembered in a very ill manner forever. I mean, think about George Washington. What do you think when you think of George Washington? You think of the father of our country, Abraham Lincoln. First thing that you think of, freed the slaves. What do you think of when you think of somebody like Joseph Stalin? A killer, a massacre, 20 to 40 million people killed in great purges in the Soviet Union during his time. You think of Idi Amin, and you think of the guy who killed a lot of people, and not even thinking about the overall, maybe not necessarily like inhumanity by killing people. What do you think of when you think of Nixon? Richard Nixon. Some people think of him as a liar. The whole Watergate scandal, bad imagery. And I'm not judging, I'm just saying that sometimes the things that you do, if you want to be remembered for one thing, what is that going to be? And for Carol, it might be she killed Karen and David. And that's not always a good thing. And I think that, again, Carol wasn't thinking about Karen and David in that circumstance. I think that nonetheless, Rick definitely has the ability to think about other people in the long run. Again, I mean, even though he does care about Carl and Judith, I think that when he looks at them, he sees, himself as a father, and he starts to think of, what do I want to teach my children? I want to teach my children that we need to grow this world, that we need to be humane. We can't go so far gone like the governor that we're doing the things that he did. And for me, as a father and as a leader, I need to set a good example for my children, and I would never make a decision like that. And I think that Rick thinks that every life in his group is precious, and he doesn't want to take unnecessary risks with them. You can clearly see that in a lot of the things that he does. Rick has put his life on the line for several people in his group. Glenn several times, he helped save them. He saved Carl on numerous occasions. He saved Michonne. He's shown that he cares about everybody in that group, and that he's not going to do something to hurt one of them. He's not going to do that. And Carol killing Karen and David, while we understand it shows that she doesn't have that sense of compassion. And that would lead a lot of people to doubt her. And you know, if she was leading my group, I'd be laying down at night going, oh, what if I sneeze and if I get a sneezing spell and a bunch of walkers are going by, is Carol going to stab me in the neck in order to survive? I don't know. You never know. I mean, heck, when Karen and David got sick, she killed them. If I'm being a liability to Carol, would she kill me? She might. And I think that that's not always a good thing for something like Carol. But again, you know, I think that they both have their great, you know, sets of strengths, and they both have weaknesses. That's just the way it is. But I think that both of them have definitely shown that they have the ability to make tough decisions. They have the ability to be a leader, and I appreciate both of them. I really think they're great characters, and I'm very anxious to see how they interact as we move on in this 5th season, because I feel like they're going to be at a point where they're able to move forward, but I don't think that everything's necessarily all hunky-dory. You know, I'm very interested to see if the killing of Karen and David comes back up, you know, in Carol's interactions with Rick, with Daryl, whatever the case may be. I feel like she's earned her way back in the group for sure. But, you know, what do people think of her overall? I'm very interested to see now that she's back. But I love Carol. Carol is one of my favorite characters, and I definitely have a lot of respect for her, you know, how much she's grown. You would not recognize the Carol in season 1 and the Carol in season 5. They're two totally different people, and I'm really, really anxious to see it. And I'm also anxious to see how Rick is as well. You know, Rick is establishing himself back in his old Rick form with a couple of new twists. I mean, I think we're going to see a different twist on the Rick from season 3. He's more like his season 3 self, but he's also willing to, you know, do more than what season 3 Rick would do. So I definitely am interested to see what's going to happen. So thanks, everybody. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. Feel free to subscribe. I have more videos coming. And don't be afraid to suggest a video topic to me. I'm always interested in doing various video topics. If you have an idea, feel free to share it with me. I will give you credit for it. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.